Endless Waterfall by J. Pilgrim. What if the man you love is running from a past that could burn your world down? Endless Waterfall is an emotional roller coaster set against the raw beauty of rural New Zealand. It's not just a love story. It's about survival, redemption, and rebuilding something beautiful from ash. Joe is a drifter with a haunted past and a battered soul. Lana is the only child of a hard-working farm family, fiercely independent. When their lives cross on a summer road, something real begins to grow. But Joe's past isn't done with him. And when violence finds its way to the quiet farm, love is tested by fire. Chapter 10. Fallout. The burn ward of the hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and sorrow. A nurse had opened the window earlier that morning to let in a breeze, but it hadn't moved the heaviness in the air. Lana lay propped up on fresh pillows, her arm carefully resting in a sling to avoid disturbing the dressings on her shoulder and back. A light sheen of perspiration covered her face despite the fan humming in the corner. Her skin looked paler now, not from the burns but from the exhaustion that had finally sunk its teeth into her. Joe sat in the chair by the window, hunched forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on the floor tiles like they might rearrange into something that made sense. Lana's gaze was distant, fixed on the wall across from her, jaw tight. Her voice cut through the silence like a shard of glass. "Joe," he looked up. "I need you to leave," he blinked. "What?" She finally turned to face him, and the hurt in her expression was clearer now, etched into the lines beneath her eyes, in the way her lips didn't quite hold steady. "You need to go," she said again. "I'm still processing all of this. You should have told me, from the start." "But you didn't." Joe opened his mouth, but she lifted her hand, stopping him. "I'm not saying I dislike you. I can't have you here right now." Joe swallowed hard. His chest felt like it had been hollowed out. "Okay," he said quietly. "If that's what you want, it's what I need." He stood slowly, nodding once, his hands uncertain at his sides. He wanted to say more, explain again, beg her to understand. But there was no space for it now. Not here. Not today. "I'm sorry," he said, before slipping out of the room without another word. 30 minutes later, the arrival. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. Lana turned her head just as her mother, Angie, appeared in the doorway, her travel-worn cardigan half-buttoned, a carry-on bag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes scanned the room, found her daughter, and immediately welled up. "Lana," she whispered. "Mom." Angie crossed the room in 3 strides and gently wrapped her arms around Lana's good side, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. "Oh, sweetheart." "I'm here." Behind her came Robert, slower, more composed, but his expression was strained. His jeans were dusty blue, his jacket still zipped halfway. He nodded at Lana, his lips pressed into a hard line, but his eyes softened. "You all right?" he asked. "I've been better," Lana replied, attempting a weak smile. "But I'm here," Angie fussed, wiping at Lana's forehead, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You're lucky, you know that?" "The doctor said it could have been so much worse." Lana nodded silently, tears prickling again but refusing to fall. Robert stepped beside the bed and placed a hand gently on her shin. "We came as soon as we got the call. Booked the first flight out of Queenstown." She nodded again. After a long moment, Angie asked, "Where's Joe?" Lana didn't answer immediately. Her voice was quieter when it finally came. "I asked him to leave." Angie sat down, exchanging a brief glance with Robert. "You're upset," Angie said gently, "and I get that. We are too." With a dry throat, Lana spoke. "He was associated with a drug gang in Wellington. Joe decided to leave the gang, and they pursued him as a result." Robert spoke then, voice low, firm. "We should have vetted him. Should have asked more questions before letting him onto the farm. That was our mistake. We didn't protect you." Lana looked between them. "He should have told me about his past. He kept it quiet." "I told him off about that," She paused in contemplation. But he saved my life. Robert nodded slowly. Yeah, but he's also the reason you were in danger to begin with. Angie reached for Lana's hand. He's not a bad person, love, but he brought a dangerous past with him. And we can't pretend that didn't happen. I know, Lana whispered. I just don't know what to feel yet. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of machines and the distant shuffle of hospital staff filling in the space. Robert stood, walking to the window, arms crossed. He should have told you who he was. If he had, maybe we could have handled things differently. Angie squeezed her daughter's hand. For now, just focus on healing. The rest can wait. Lana closed her eyes, the ache in her shoulder pulsing beneath the gauze, but the deeper ache, the one in her chest, throbbed louder. The weight of consequence. It was late morning, almost lunchtime, when Joe stepped into the cowshed yard. A breeze scraped over the paddocks, tugging at his hoodie as he crossed the yard with shoulders hunched and eyes bloodshot. The cows in the yard seemed uneasy as their usual morning routine had been upset. He hadn't slept. After leaving the hospital, he had hitched a ride back to the farm. He'd sat mostly silent in the vehicle, replaying everything over and over. Lana's eyes, her voice telling him to leave. Every memory clawed at him. But the cows didn't care about regret. They were waiting in the yard, lowing impatiently, udders full, stamping their hooves. Joe slipped on the apron, fingers stiff from the stress, and started the machine. He moved methodically, not thinking. Just doing. The pit echoed with familiar sounds. Milking cups hissing, chains rattling, cows shifting their weight. But it couldn't drown out the guilt. He was halfway through the herd when he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Joe turned, and then he was shoved hard against the cold concrete wall. Robert's forearm pressed into his chest. Joe didn't fight. He didn't even raise his hands. Robert's face was tight with fury, not shouting. But worse, controlled, quiet, measured. "What have you got my family into?" Robert growled. "My only daughter is lying in a hospital bed with third-degree burns. She's looking at years of rehab, skin grafts, and you want me to let that pass?" Joe looked him in the eye. "No, I don't." Robert's eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't slept either. His jacket was still zipped, boots caked with old mud, and his stubble had grown into a rough, uneven beard overnight. He looked like a man who'd spent the night replaying the worst moments of his life in his head. Joe spoke quietly. "But I didn't light the fire, Robert. I didn't want this. I didn't plan it. And I didn't bring it here on purpose." Robert's jaw tensed. His fist twitched at his side, but he stepped back. "You owe me an explanation." Joe nodded, rubbing the back of his neck where it had hit the wall. "Yeah, you're right." He stepped away from the machine, the hiss of milk lines still steady in the background. "I was part of a gang, in Wellington, started small. Moving pills, party stuff. Then it got heavier. Meth, cocaine. I handled drops, cash runs. Got tied in too deep with a crew led by a guy named Den Morrison. Smart, sadistic. Controls a big chunk of the underground in the hut." He paused. Robert just stared at him, arms folded, jaw clenched. "I wanted out, saw where it was heading. The violence, the paranoia. I walked, just left. Ditched everything. Hit the road with a pack and no plan. And you thought it wouldn't follow you?" Robert snapped. "I hoped it wouldn't," Joe said. "I didn't know they'd track me. I didn't know they'd torch the goddamn cottage with her inside." Robert's face twisted in pain, then steadied. Joe's voice dropped. "I'll carry this for the rest of my life, but I swear I'm not that man anymore. I want to make something real out of this. Out of me." Robert was quiet for a long moment. The cows shifted behind them, one letting out a long, low moo. Finally, Robert exhaled hard through his nose. "Lana thinks for herself, always has. But we, Angie and me, we trusted you too. That trust's broken now. Joe nodded, swallowing hard. I know. But, Robert said, you saved her. You carried her through the dark, got her underwater, and got her in the ambulance. So, he looked out across the milking pit. You want to work? Fine. You stay. But not in the house. You'll take the caravan behind the shed. Joe's breath caught, surprised. Seriously? Robert didn't answer. He just turned toward the pit, yanked on a pair of gloves, and nodded to the next cow. Let's get these girls milked. Joe stared for a beat, then pulled on a fresh glove and stepped back into line beside him. The next cow shifted, and the suction cups clicked into place. They didn't speak again for 20 minutes. Just worked side by side. Quiet. Heavy. But for Joe, that silence meant something. He still had a chance. Not at forgiveness. Not yet. But at redemption. At the hospital. Angie wiped Lana's face with a cool cloth. Her daughter had drifted into a pained sleep again, brow furrowed, breathing light and uneven. Angie smoothed her hair gently. He saved you, baby. But he broke something too. Robert's phone call came through a few minutes later. He's staying, he said simply. I put him in the caravan, Angie sighed. Are you okay with that? Robert paused. I'm not okay with any of this. But it's better than throwing him to the wolves. They both fell quiet. Lana stirred. Even in sleep she whispered his name. And Angie's heart broke a little more. Cracks and light. The hospital visits became a rhythm. Every morning after the early milking, Joe washed up at the yard tap, changed into a clean shirt, and drove the old ute to Palmerston North. He brought flowers once. Wild ones he picked from the edge of the paddocks, and Lana barely glanced at them. He didn't bring flowers again. Just himself. Always just himself. The first few days, she hardly spoke. Robert and Angie were always there too, taking turns sitting by her bed, helping her sip from the plastic water cup, gently brushing knots from her hair. Robert said little, his quiet presence steadying but distant. Angie tried to hold the space together with soft smiles and motherly fussing, but it was clear even she was fraying. Lana didn't smile. Her burns were healing slowly. Medical gauze now covered in fresh bandages, replaced daily with clinical precision. Her skin was red and swollen, particularly over the top of her shoulder and back. Nerve pain made sleep nearly impossible. The doctors talked about skin grafts, physio, rehab, time, so much time. A few days after surgery, Gwendolyn. The scent of disinfectant was faint but ever present. Lana sat upright in the reclined bed, a soft cotton blanket pulled across her lap, bandages wrapping her shoulder and upper back. Her hair was pulled up in a loose bun, some strands escaping around her face. Her skin was pale. Eyes dimmer than usual, makeup-free, the version of herself she never let the world see. Except now, the world didn't feel like something she owed much to. She was staring at the wall when the door opened without a knock. "Lana?" came a voice, too chipper for Lana's low mood. Gwendolyn. Busty and blonde, Gwen always walked like she was a spotlight in motion. Today was no different. Tight jeans, leopard print top knotted at the waist, gold hoop earrings flashing. Her perfume arrived 2 seconds before she did. She stepped forward, holding a cardboard coffee tray and a pink tote bag. "Hey, babe," she said with a smile that softened slightly when she saw Lana's expression. "You look, well?" Lana gave her a weak smile. "Barely." Gwen moved closer. "Got you a coffee." "Just as you like it." "Thanks," Lana murmured. There was a pause, just long enough to feel it. Then Gwen sat down on the edge of the chair by the bed, crossing one leg over the other. "So, Joe." Lana looked at her. "What about him?" "You know what?" Gwen said, voice quieter now. "Everyone's talking. He's some sort of gangster." "A bad ass." Lana looked away. Gwen leaned in slightly. I'm not judging. I know how things look, and you've been through hell. I wouldn't blame you if you cut ties. I don't know what I want, Lana said flatly. I can't even look in the mirror without flinching. Gwen's face softened. I get it. No, you don't, Lana said, not unkindly. You still have your skin, Gwen swallowed. The room fell quiet. Okay, so maybe I don't know what you are feeling, Gwen said. But I do know the kind of girl you were before him. You didn't wait around for someone to come and make you whole. Lana blinked slowly. I don't feel like that girl anymore. Gwen reached across, gently took her hand. Outside, the world carried on. Buses moving past, clouds shifting, birds landing on window ledges. Life kept going. Inside, Lana took a sip of the coffee. It was warm. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to feel something again. Joe looked worse every day. A beard was growing in rough patches along his jaw, not out of style but exhaustion. He worked the farm in the early morning, visited Lana, and sometimes helped Robert mend fences at dusk just so he didn't have to think too long about anything. He rarely left her side in the hospital, even if she didn't speak. And slowly, she started letting him in again. She asked about the cows. He told her Nancy still wouldn't let him near her without a threat of bodily harm. That made her smile faintly, and he clung to that moment like a lifeline. He brought her iced coffee from her favorite cafe in Levin. She sipped it slowly, then looked at him for the first time in days. Really looked. I don't dislike you, she said softly. Joe didn't say anything, just nodded. I'm still angry, but I don't dislike you, Lana. Lana remained in bed, as she seldom left it. However, on this day, the nurse assisted her in positioning her legs over the side of the bed. Joe had stepped out of the room, and Angie had hovered, offering to stay, but Lana waved her off. Please, Mom, just give me a minute. She shuffled across the cold linoleum floor, her hospital gown tied loosely behind her. The movement was slow. She winced as the tension tugged at the skin on her back. Every step was careful. The mirror was mounted above the sink. She lowered her gown and looked. What she saw stole the breath from her lungs. Her shoulder and upper back were a patchwork of pink, red, and raw flesh. Blisters faded, new skin foreign. The swelling had gone down, but the blemishes had not. Her collarbone was uneven with the damage. Her once smooth skin had become unfamiliar terrain. Lana reached out and touched her reflection. Her fingers didn't shake, but her throat did. Tears welled without warning. She didn't look like her anymore. Didn't feel like her. She sank slowly to the edge of the sink, curling in on herself, silent sobs rising from somewhere deep, somewhere helpless. The attending nurse consoled and supported her back to the bed. Lana sat on the edge of the bed, eyes dry but distant. Angie and Robert. Retiring for bed that night, Robert pulled the blanket over his chest. She's gone quiet again. She saw the scars, Angie said. Folding a towel on her lap, that was difficult for her. Robert exhaled through his nose. I don't know how to help her. You can't fix this with timber and nails, Angie said. We just have to be here. That's all we can do. Robert thoughtfully stroked his beard while contemplating the charred remains of the farm cottage. Perhaps Joe can, he remarked. Angie didn't disagree. Hi. Before you watch the next chapter, remember to connect with J. Pilgrim. Discover the magic. Embrace the wisdom. Live the adventure. Explore the world of J. Pilgrim by checking out the links in the channel description. Also, remember that liking, subscribing, and sharing helps this channel reach more people who love fiction stories. See you in the next episode.